get started to be timely.
More good trees.
I want to say congratulations again to Reggie. We're so happy that you're with us today, and I did see pictures of his new baby girl, so many congratulations.
Thank you. That's great.
All right, we have several items on our agenda today, including a review of the committee's schedule. We talked last week about the possibility that if we got through with our work today, we might not need to have our meeting next week. So that's not a challenge to try to get through, but I would just remind you that that's a possibility. Let's go to the approval of the November 30th minutes, and I think we've just passed out some amended minutes. There was a kind of a scrivener's error there, so we put those in front of you. And I see some of you are looking at them. It had to do with the item. It had to do with an item that we voted on, and it said that Reggie Ellis and Anise Proctor were in opposition, and it should have said they were absent. Oh. So that's the only change in the minutes. Do I have a motion for approval?
I'll move.
We have a motion?
Second.
We have a second. Is there opposition? Without opposition, the motion passes. All right. We now have one individual who'd like to be heard today, Mr. Wilson Barnes. And Mr. Barnes, if you'd like to step forward to the podium.
If I can get these old bones up here, I sure will.
A lot of us have old bones and can certainly sympathize with you.
Hey, my name is Wilson Barnes, and I reside at 1949 Setting Sun Trail. And I'm here to speak on behalf of the Tallahassee branch of the NAACP. We sort of heard about this effort through the back door, and immediately we were somewhat alarmed. So I proceeded to, we'd never heard about it officially, but maybe that's my fault because I'm old and I don't go on the internet and all of that stuff like I'm sure all of you all do. But I came up and I saw my old friend, just inadvertently ran into a Kathy, and she informed me that rather than the meeting starting at 9 o'clock, that this morning it was going to start at 11:30. So Kathy, I got to thank you for getting the old codger straight. Now, let me tell you that what I want to do is briefly tell you all what the NAACP perspective is on this. And we're deadly serious when it comes to this kind of stuff that we saw about the single-member districts, about what some have proposed to do with the constitutional officers. And we note that after, 50 years of progress in this democracy that we have today, that 4 of those happen to be African American. Just happened that way. It happens that way in a democratic society, that 4 or 5 black people, and we never had that concentration before, they show up when they're good people. White people show up, Hispanics, Arabs. That's what we believe. And there's always a fear in our business that there may be some underlying attitudes that are uncomfortable with that kind of diversity. Well, hey, those people, and we saw it when President Obama became president. Sometimes these are painful topics to face, but they're real, and we believe in trying to and understand the whole picture to start there. Now, let me come on forward a little ways having said that. We noted in the NAACP, the national office, state office, and here in Tallahassee, that with the election of President Obama, there was kind of a backlash. I mean, from a not a majority of the population, white and black. It was from a minority. And through the way they partition and gerrymander districts in this country, there were those who could hold up, get the right kind of Congress, and whatever he proposes, we're against. Though we may have proposed it before, and y'all saw that, I'm sure. I know I saw it. Didn't even want to let this president appoint the last Supreme Court justice. All of that's out there, folks. That's in the air. Now, coming on forward here into Leon County, this charter and the laws of Leon County have served us well since the 50s, when the NAACP unleashed the civil rights revolution in Tallahassee. Leon County and Tallahassee were not the same in those days when we started the civil rights revolution as they are today. I'm very proud of this democracy in Leon County today. But we, since, again, in this current national atmosphere, we realize that we must be mindful and watchful, because there are a lot of dog whistles out here. And that's what we have to watch for, the dog whistles. But this form of government has served us well. And so for us to learn, and let me go down the list of these, to learn through the back door that somebody is saying, hey, we need to tamper with single-member districts. I don't know any other way to put it, but we're going to resist that with every means at our disposal, legally. And I think Herb knows that. That's point number one. Point number two, nonpartisan election for constitutional officers. I think Walt McNeil has been here and Doris Malloy, and they've stated a position on it. We share their concerns. And there have been a couple of other things. And we would just ask you all, and I'm sure there's some perspectives that would justify some of the recommendations that have been made. I'm not criticizing the recommendations. But make sure that we're at the table and we're telling y'all that ain't going to work. That's a dog ain't going to hunt. We cannot live with that. Because in addition to this issue with the charter review, you note in the school paper that the Leon County schools are resegregated. We cannot accept that. You're going to see in the paper on Sunday that Tallahassee Democrats are going to run a story about the expulsion rate in Leon County schools. Okay? 1,900 African American students, and they make only about 49% of the student population, and 400 white students, and I think they're white students are right at 50%, somewhere. You give or take a few tenths of a point on those numbers. So we're concerned about that. It may be legitimate. It may be just something that's happening. But NAACP, we get edgy. And with all the resources that we have, we want to keep this community going forward. We want to keep it going forward where there's harmony between all of our people, blacks, whites, Hispanics, women, men. And the only way we can do that is making sure that there is equality and that there is fairness. So I guess what I would say here after all of that rambling on is that we hope that you all will at least, when you come up with these ideas, and some of them are bright and some are good, that give us a chance to tell you what they mean to us that you may not have thought about. Just give us a chance.
And Mr. Barnes, I will assure you, we have 3 public meetings scheduled at the end of these deliberations, and I know you'll be there, and it would invite you to bring others.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I don't believe there are any other people here to speak. All right. Let's move ahead. I want to remind everybody that we have voted to request additional information on 4 items today. The county administrator and the county attorney are going to walk us through each of those items separately. At the conclusion of that discussion, we're going to vote on how we want to proceed. And as the administrator and attorney will explain, each item contains a series of options for our consideration. The voting thresholds will increase to move it to the next step. That is a simple majority. The ideas that we have put forward only needed 4 votes to get more research done, and we'll have an opportunity, if you have any other ideas that you'd like us to discuss, to bring those up closer to the end of the meeting. But today, if you want to advance it to the next step of having charter language drafted, that'll take a simple majority. So, Vince, would you like to get us started?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Good morning, committee members. As the chairman said, in addition to the items that the committee has already tasked us with and either disposed of or in the pipeline, we have, at your last meeting, received your direction to bring forward 4 additional items, which are before you today. And I will start off with one, and as you'll see from the agenda, Herb's got the heavy lifting with 3 additional ones that'll follow. But just to get things started, item 4A is in response to your direction to bring back additional staff analysis on the consolidation of law enforcement services. Again, as requested at your last meeting, the analysis goes into a bit more detail. Committee members, I'll just hit the highlights and then turn it back to you all. Just to remind you, the consolidation of law enforcement services cannot be effectuated through a county charter. You all had some discussion on that previously. However, the item does outline 2 methods by which, provided by Florida law, that you could effectuate a consolidation, if you will, of law enforcement services. One is through the transfer of powers provision, which is referenced in our county charter and provided for in the Florida Constitution, and one is through an interlocal agreement. The former, the transfer of powers, as under Florida law, requires that a special bill or a resolution by the city and county to put the issue on the ballot for consideration by the local electorate. It requires a dual referendum, an affirmative vote in a dual referendum, which means it must pass by a vote of the electorate in the city or in the incorporated city and in the county. Of course, this is for a more permanent, if you will, transfer of law enforcement services. Again, this is provided for under what is referred to as a transfer of powers. And as I mentioned, through an interlocal agreement, which simply allows the government to contract for law enforcement services with another government for a period of time. This obviously is the more common way that local governments do this. It is seen most frequently in large counties where there are, in some cases, dozens of cities, and in particular, small cities tend to contract for law enforcement services with the sheriff's offices in larger counties. The item before you spells out arguments in general, very high level for generally those which are taken relative to either opposing or supporting consolidation of law enforcement services. We note in your analysis that that to pursue consolidation, the city and the county and the Leon County Sheriff's Office would need to conduct a thorough review to address potential issues and costs, of course. But because consolidation of law enforcement cannot be effectuated through a charter amendment, and that this committee is limited in how you could recommend such a change, we would recommend that if you would wish to include a recommendation in your final report, you could do so for the Board of County Commissioners to coordinate with the Leon County Sheriff's Office and the city to explore consolidation of law enforcement after a thorough analysis of the cost and benefits to the community. With that, you'll see the general options that are before you with a little bit of a tweak in option 1, which is to ask staff to prepare some language relative to including such a recommendation in your final report. We just construe that to require a simple majority like other motions that you're moving forward here. And of course, options 2 and 3 reflect if you should seek to request additional analysis or if you wish to take no further action on that. With that, I'll pause and hand it back to the committee, and we're happy to answer any questions that you might have.
And I'll remind you, if you have questions or comments, if you'd please raise your cards. Wow.
I have a question.
Okay. Yes, Casey.
It's my understanding, like, we would still want a vote on this countywide. We wouldn't necessarily just be asking the Board of County Commissioners to work on consolidation, but we would actually have a referendum on the ballot. That was my understanding. I just wanted to know if others.
You could, as I mentioned, this committee certainly could make a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners to, again, one, thoroughly evaluate it first, to identify all of the issues and costs associated with it, and to consider placing it on the ballot again for a dual referendum vote, again, if that's the option that you all chose to pursue.
But to your question, this group would have to just make a recommendation to the county commission to address it, but even the county commission could not put it on the ballot without the city.
Without the city.
Okay. Kathy.
Thank you, Casey. That was going to be my point. I think we are going way beyond the purview of this charter committee if we ask the county commission to consider items that are not, cannot be delineated in the threshold of the Leon County Charter. So I'm going to move option 3, take no further action at this time.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there other discussion? We'll have a roll call vote.
Reginald Ellis,
Yes.
Michael Urick,
Yes.
Neil Fleckenstein,
Yes.
Lee Hinkle,
Yes.
Kathy Jones,
Yes.
Ken Hart,
No.
Casey Perkins,
Yes.
Annis Prosser,
Yes.
Jay Revel,
Yes.
Gordon Thames,
No.
Ted Thomas,
Yes.
Kim Williams.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, thank you. The next item would be the hiring and firing process for the county attorney.
We talking about hiring him or firing him?
Since I'm already been hired,
The process.
only applicable part.
Motion by Kim Williams.
As I mentioned to you when we had our initial meeting, the county attorney is not mentioned in the Florida statutes anywhere, just the county administrator. So the first time it actually became an official office was when we adopted the charter in 2002. When we did our first round of charter amendments, there was a proposal to, if you would, modify the standard process for the hiring and firing of the county administrator to require the two-step process that you see in the current charter. At that point, I think, persuaded the county commission or the charter review committee that I was just perfectly fine with a 4-3 vote and I'm out of here process, and I didn't really, and by the way, they'll never need to vote if it comes down to that, because the chair will be empty by that time. But I guess the ask here, or the consideration is, shouldn't both the only two employees that report directly to the Board of County Commissioners have the same process? For me, it is in my contract that it's a simple majority vote at any regularly scheduled meeting. I'm ambivalent about whether we should do this or not do this. There's at least merit to the argument that it ought to be the same, since the positions basically are the same in their relationship with the Board of County Commissioners. So that's why we left the recommendation to be the committee's preference. And that's it.
All right, we're open for discussion. Jay?
Sure. So when I brought this up, again, my kind of mindset going into this whole exercise is I think when you've got a guiding document like this, you want to be as consistent across the document as you can to make sure that all pieces of the government are treated equally under our local constitution. And I think this is one of those sort of things that I caught an eye on and said, well, this doesn't seem to equate. Seems like if you're going to have a process for one, you ought to have a process for the other, to Herb's point. I believe consistency in a guiding document for governance is very, very good, and I would move that we take the next step to draft some language on this.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, and we have some discussion. Gordon.
Yeah, my point, and I'm not saying I hate the idea, but slowly but surely it feels like it's an institutional creep. In other words, we get mad, we say we elect a new set of commissioners, do something about it. Then you come up here and they go, well, they got this, no offense, but they got this county attorney, hypothetically, standing in the way, and I'm a commissioner and I can't do anything about it because my hands are all tied. So there's a part of me thinks that, and I don't think the problem is at all the county attorney. I just question the wisdom about whether we should tie our elected officials' hands to where they effectively have a staff that's really running the show rather than them. That would be the policy concern I would have.
Okay. Did you change your mind?
I assume that we're making the discussion about being consistent by moving them to Vince's format, not the other way around.
Correct. Okay. Kathy.
I appreciate that, Gordon, but I feel that if the county attorney has done something so egregious that he needs to be removed from his position, that we're not going to have a hard time getting a 5-2 vote on that. And that was the same argument I made last time when I brought forward the hiring and firing standards for the county administrator. I regret not also including the county attorney at the time. I think that individuals in these positions deserve the respect of having a majority of their commissioners fire them and hire them. And I mean, obviously we have an incredible staff right now, but Herb won't always be here. So as you look toward the future, I think whoever comes into this position deserves to know that if they are going to ultimately be fired, that it's not a personality conflict, that it's because they have done something egregious and they deserve to be removed.
And I'd like to ask a question too. You have a contract right now with the Board of County Commissioners, correct?
Yes.
And was that contract the same as the previous attorney, or was it negotiated?
It was the very first time. Okay,
so if another county attorney comes in, presuming that you're not going to live forever, I'm not willing to take that step yet, but wouldn't another contract be negotiated, and wouldn't this kind of issue be able to be negotiated in that contract?
The answer is yes, but if the voters adopt this amendment to match the county administrator, county attorney, then whatever new contract was negotiated would have to be bound by what's in the charter.
But if this hadn't come up at all, could the county commission not vote to have it be a supermajority?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Ted.
Gordon, I was just curious, are you suggesting that we move the administrator back to a 4-3 vote, or you? I'm trying to understand.
No, I like Vince a lot. No, I'm teasing. I just mainly was wanting to, before we just jump in on and ride the train on his motion, just at least take a pause and think about it. I'll likely support the motion, but it just seems to me that with all of this, you have term limits. We think, oh, it's great, but in reality, the staff, some of them hardly know their way around. It increases the staff's power. So I just wanted us to think about what we were doing before we left. I mean, I really don't have a real axe to grind on it.
Okay. Are there any other comments? All right, we're ready for a vote.
Reginald Ellis,
Yes.
Michael Urick,
Yes.
Neil Fleckenstein,
Yes.
Lee Hinkle,
Yes.
Kathy Jones,
Yes.
Ken Hart,
Yes.
Casey Perkins,
Yes.
Annis Prosser,
Yes.
Jay Revel,
Yes.
Gordon Thames,
Yes.
Ted Thomas,
Yes.
Kim Williams.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
And we did that without asking Ms. Riggins what her thoughts were.
Ms. Riggins, would you like to comment after the fact?
We've already voted.
All right, thank you.
We'll send you the minority opinion.
All right, the next issue before us is the Standards for Community Redevelopment Agency expenditures. And Herb, I believe you're going to handle that.
Yes. We did the background research on whether or not we could adopt a charter change which would bind the Community Redevelopment Agency to expend funds in a certain fashion. And our conclusion, I'm just jumping to the bottom line, is I don't believe we can do that. I don't believe that the charter can bind another properly constituted legal entity's expenditures. Their expenditures are set forth by statute. And like we could not bind the expenditures of the Water Management District or any other separate legal entity, we don't think a charter change can impose those restrictions on the CRA. So our recommendation is to not take any further action.
Gordon.
Yes, I kind of think that the question was wrong because I tried to make clear that when we made the initial motion that it was to be prospective on anything moving forward, not to try to bind an already existing agreement, which is what I think they've opined on. I mean, taking a step back, I'll start at the beginning. I read with great pleasure about the new hiring of the coach, and they said, what's his, philosophy? And he says, well, offense, I don't want it to be lethal simplicity. Well, what we have going on in this community, you got the FBI investigating the CRA. You've got a tremendous negative incentive there because if I'm a developer, hypothetically, and $4 million would help my apartment deal, that's what I do is build apartments. Some of these people, the FBI in particular, spent less than $50,000 and been able to potentially corrupt politicians into taking public money and putting it into a private deal. And I'm not saying they did or didn't, but it sets up a bad temptation because that's a very profitable transaction. What this does is very simply say, in Leon County, if you're going to use our taxpayer money, no matter what you say it is taxpayer money, they can try to, this agency, that agency, that whatever it buys is going to be owned by the citizens of Leon County. In other words, I use the example of a parking garage. It could be a road. Let's take hypothetically you want a parking garage in Midtown. Spur business there, places for people to park. That's fine. Build it. Build a county parking garage there with that money. It's owned by the county. You know what? Not too many people are going to steal and pay off to build a county a parking garage. It's just supposed to be a prospective higher standard, not something meant to go back. And if I were to go back, not to totally disagree with the analysis, but the little bit I've gathered was the city established the CRA back sometime around 2004. So the CRA board is a creation of the city of Tallahassee. Is that correct? The CRA board was created by the city of Tallahassee.
The commissioners are the governing body. Yeah.
That's right. So it was created by the city. I'm just trying to make a simple point. The CRA, right here, creation of the city. Then you have three things involved. Then you have the city itself, and Reggie, I'll borrow your Coke can, and then you have us, the county. That's what makes up this whole CRA thing right here. So this opinion tells us that an agreement between these three, which, by the way, the city has a supermajority of votes on, and the county is having a hard time extricating itself from because they don't have enough votes to get out. Yet in the notes it says if you have any boundary adjustment, It requires prior written county approval. So you got this little agreement going on. And what they're trying to tell us is that we cannot put in front of the voters the question about whether things bought with public money must belong to the public, because this little agreement prohibits it. And I'm saying, I don't believe that, because our policy, our power, what Vince told us in the first meeting was that the county gets the power that was given to it by the state of Florida. It does not get its power from the city. It comes from the state and flows from the legislature. And specifically, our charter flowed from a 1968 amendment to the Florida Constitution. So if we were to cede control of our county, or our ability to put this in front of the voters because of an interlocal agreement, it might mess with what they're doing, then you've effectively handed the keys to the county to the city of Tallahassee. That's what this opinion saying we can't do something is, in my opinion, tells us. And so I will support the motion. I'll continue my motion, but I want to make it clear. My question was that what we put in front of the voters was that from this moment forward, should you approve this, then anything bought with Leon County money, CRA, whatever initial you want to hang on it, has to belong to the people of Leon County. And so this temptation, that's fine. If the city wants to go off and do their own deals on the side, it hadn't led them to a good place, but that would be up to them. But if it's going to involve Leon County money moving forward, I think it sends a very positive message. I think it sends a very ethical message. And with all, I don't say that my layman's legal analysis here is better than the county's, but I think the question was misunderstood, because I think they're trying to say we can't go back and affect this agreement after the fact. And whether or not that's true, that's not what I was trying to do in my motion. My motion was to put something in front of the voters where they could vote on that from this moment when they had passed it moving forward, which I believe that legal agreement would have nothing to do with. And I certainly don't believe that an agreement between the city and the county trumps the charter or the Florida Constitution or the legislature. That's my comment for the moment. Thank you.
Mike.
So this is directed to you guys. For clarification, with the CRA, those funds are to be put in place to, if for a better term, restore a blighted area of the community, and the funding from which comes from tax increment financing.
That's correct.
So if we take Gordon's theory on the citizens owning the property, then would that even be taxable? I mean, we're looking at a model that the U.S. Department of Commerce does when they infuse money into a community, and they want a certain period of time that they own the asset that they're investing in, set aside any type of beautification projects. And that's what it sounds like. If we're going to be using taxpayers' money to put into the CRA to make improvements, then we want the citizens to have ownership of that project. And for what? Perpetuity, a certain period of time?
Yes, later the county, I guess, could via a vote decide to sell that parking garage in years future. But the model is that we are supposed to create an environment where private business can thrive. We're not supposed to pick your business over Neil's. And it becomes a powerful temptation when we say we've got $4 million to put in your pocket. And by the way, how to get there and why the rest of us not in on it, right? However, if you are requiring that money going to something, I went out to Colorado a couple years ago, and in Vail, Colorado, they have a big parking garage there, which serves that community because people come in all the time to eat, ski, otherwise they need a place to park. So that parking garage serves all of the businesses there and helps them grow their business, grow the tax revenues, thrive, and do likewise. I've heard talk that there may be a need for a parking garage in Midtown, so I use that as a more local example of something where, okay, do we say Reggie's going to open up a new private business and we like Reggie, so we're going to give him $4 million, or do we just build a parking garage and say, let the free market, let these people come in and enjoy the benefits of that, but that parking garage is paid for with tax money, and it belongs to Leon County. And so if somebody pays an entrance fee to park in it, then Leon County can set that at a nickel. They can set it at $5, but it belongs to the county, just like FSU's parking garages belong to FSU.
So is your position that CRA money should be used for general purpose projects and not?
Well, I'm probably not as policy laden with you about what general purpose projects are. However, I feel like in the instance of the parking garage, somebody can make a decision to say, we think that we ought to target Midtown for a little bit more business improvement. We could take the south side, find out things that would help businesses there. What do they need? They need safe streets, well-lit streets, better sidewalks, a place to park, maybe a police substation, any number of things. But are we going to take Casey's new development, which competes with Neal's, and say, golly, I like Casey's development, so we're going to give him $4 million? No, not in Leon County. That's my proposal.
Jay.
Vince, can you give us...
Would you speak into the microphone? Make sure
Yes,
it's heard.
I was a little too comfortable there. Can you give us an update for context of, I know the county has made some requests of late regarding the status of the county's participation in the CRAs, just so everyone has the full context of where we are on that, where that stands, and what that environment looks like.
Sure. We are in that process, Jay, as you mentioned. The board has taken action officially as a county commission, and then the CRA has subsequently taken action relative to options related to the county getting out of funding participation with new projects in the downtown CRA. So to summarize the most recent action taken at the CRA, which I think was consistent with the board's direction to get out, for the lack of a better term, in the downtown CRA. The CRA, the Community Redevelopment Agency, then took a vote, and that vote was to bring back options related to the county's getting out of the CRA, with the exception of the downtown CRA, with the exception of 3 projects which were on the books being considered by the agency, and essentially where staff is working out between the city and the county staff to determine things like, okay, if the county is no longer participating relative to the downtown CRA, do they vote on those projects? What changes need to be made relative to the governing body? Does the city still need to hold joint meetings when they're dealing with, will they in the future, when they're dealing with just downtown projects? So all of those types of issues are being worked out now and will be coming back to the respective commissions in the CRA very soon. We're actually getting very close to providing some options related to working out those details. So that's the latest.
Kim.
The CRA has a lot of functions, and I'm sensitive to what Gordon says about public ownership of this, of the development that takes place in the CRA. If you take an example of a parking garage, and it's a publicly owned piece of land, and the CRA buys it and then creates a parking garage that belongs to government, there are no taxes. There is no increase in tax increment financing available to build a garage or the next project that would take place. The only way the CRA can be effective is to create value in the district where the CRA collects its tax increments funds from. So if you don't invest in the downtown and the growth is at this level, but you reinvest taxes above the taxable assessed value in 2004 like it is now, and you slightly increase the growth rate for the downtown areas, the support of the developments come with consequences. Consequences are additional accoutrement in the project, better facade, more parking, easier walkway. The parking being in the building and belonging to the building, but yet being reserved for public use, makes it taxable. So it can be, the cost of it or the support for it can be recovered. There's a lot of facade grants that take place. They're like $25,000, $30,000 in blighted areas, not necessarily in one part of town, but when you look at the Frenchtown, Southside, downtown CRA, I can't remember. There's dozens of facade grants that have taken place on private property. Without the ability to use the funds on private property, then the blighted areas that you wish to help can only receive infrastructure that won't make them look any better or accrue in value, a taxable value any faster, or in a better neighborhood for those that live there. So I understand your quandary about where the money's spent, but I can just tell you that it's been very, very effective in Tallahassee. And the downtown district is many millions of dollars in collected or in assessed value ahead of where it would have been if the projects that have been supported by the CRA were not put in place. There's some stuff right now that's being considered for the South Side, South City particularly, to try to change the way Tallahassee educates less fortunate kids, how they house them in a facility adjacent to schools and other things that will make their ability to become more successful in their lives take place. And all of that takes a little bit of this and a little bit of that. It's not as simple as a parking garage. It's a lot more complicated. And it's sometimes like making sausage, I guess. But at the end of the day, if you look at Gain Street and you look at the $200 million worth of development that took place in an old warehouse district that looked that way all of my life in Tallahassee, I think you can see that there are some good things that can come from public funding of private structures with requirements that those structures meet what we're looking for in that neighborhood, not just let the developers decide what it should look like. So that's why I support it.
Well, rather than letting a group by the CRA that has now got the FBI in town looking at who might have done what, decide where taxpayer money should go, I would say that perhaps we should let the voters decide whether they want to own what's bought with their own tax money, would be my first thing. Secondly, a lot of these taxes are illusory because let's take the downtown hotel. I think the very first thing they're talking about doing is deferring taxes on them for 25 or 30 years. So we're going to build something that's going to compete with private industry down the road, maybe Mr. Ballard's new building, and we're going to say you don't have to pay taxes for 20 years. But then the argument used to support it is this is going to generate a lot of taxes. Well, not really in my lifetime, probably. And so my thought is we are fundamentally still a free market private economy last time I checked. It doesn't mean that anything in life is pure, but I think that the voters ought to be able to have a say that what is purchased with tax money in Leon County must belong to the taxpayer at the end of the day. So you're right. I mean, there's a lot of sausage being made, and they say if you want to keep your respect for sausage in the law, you won't watch either of them being made. But unfortunately, the reality, I mean, I didn't even know what a CRA was 6 months ago or 8 months ago.
Well, and that's the reason.
Now I know FBI. I know people are going, oh my God, I got to quit. It's so stressful, this job. I mean, you just got a lot of things going on in the community. It hadn't led us to a great place. I'm not saying it hadn't been some good things done in the past, but this is lethal simplicity, quote the new coach, against corruption, because there's not a lot of people going to do shady stuff to build something for the county.
Well, if due process has anything to do, and if you're innocent until proven guilty, at this point, we don't have anybody that's been proven guilty of doing anything illegal with the CRA.
Well, this motion doesn't imply that. It just says, look, give the voters a chance to say, looking at what's going on, if it's my money, my tax money, all $2 I put in the pot, whatever, either I like the sausage factory or I'd prefer that it be something at the end of the day that's owned by the public. I just want them to be able to have a say on it. If they come back and say, heck yeah, I like putting millions of dollars in Neil's pocket over there, then amen, let's go.
There's 9 CRA commissioners, and they're all elected officials, and the public has a lot to say. I'm just, it's a view maybe from the porch Having been close to it, I was on the Downtown Redevelopment Committee where we reviewed the projects with bankers and appraisers and accountants and all that were sent to the CRA and say, hey, this makes sense or it doesn't. Most of the support levels of these projects are like 5% or less of what the project costs. And all of the money, if it's any of it, goes back to the developer is from tax increases created. So it's taxes on the property that has been developed being returned to the developer for however long it takes to pay the 5% back, and it's not available if it doesn't create the taxes. So if the project fails, then the CRA is not on. There's no guarantee of the debt.
Would you be afraid of trying to sell that to the public? Is that why this motion would be spooky? Why not take it to the voters and say you should vote for the CRA because we're making all these deals?
I just would like you to know that there's another side to that story, and a lot of it is really good, and it's not all corruption and FBI and whatever else may be used to sell the motion. I just think it's fair to say that if we were going to have a discussion on CRA, we ought to have Wayne Tedder come in here and give his presentation to this group so you'd understand how it all worked. I think that would be a valuable thing.
Okay, we've got some other comments. Ted, you're next.
Obviously, this is a very confusing and important discussion. I think there's good points on both sides. I don't know I think we need some assurity. We need as Gordon said, we need to have some assurance that our tax dollars are well used. And I think that's what he's trying to say. And I hear Kim's telling us that the appreciation values would not have occurred downtown and other places had it not been for CRA dollars infused to those properties. One thing I would caution you to know, Kim, is that those extra dollars that go to the CRA and they don't go to the general revenues, it puts a burden on the rest of the businesses in our community because that increase in value could go toward the general revenue. So there is some question about the benefit, the total benefit to the total community for those CRA dollars. I don't know where I am with this. I'll be honest with you. This is a complex thing. I guess I'd throw it back to the county commission, let them decide it. So I don't know how we do that, Gordon, but.
Okay, we have a bunch of cards up. Michael, you were next, then Kathy, then Ken, then Neil.
Well, I just wanted to make a statement about, there was, and I don't know how the deal worked on the hotel, but, the city of Tallahassee, it has the largest enterprise zone I've ever seen. And it almost blankets the entire city if it doesn't. So that may have been part of an enterprise zone package. I'm not quite sure, though, but I just wanted to throw the enterprise zone out in an overlay of we're talking about a CRA. It's also my understanding, and I could be wrong, that the increase in taxes that are raised in the CRA go back to fund that CRA district, or can they flow into general revenue? So it's not. So what it would be is, because by statute the CRA is created, and now you are investing money into that CRA to increase the taxable base of the property to continue to put back into that blighted area to bring it up to modern standards, community standards. So to have the entire electorate vote on how that money is going to be placed is kind of encroaching into the citizens, what they want to use for, and what the community, what the county wants to use and the city wants to use that increase in real estate value, those funds for. So that's something to take into consideration. It's not the entire Leon County that is going to benefit from that increase in taxable revenue.
But isn't that the point, that then the money is not going,
okay,
it's going to a chosen few rather than the general fund?
Hold on. Kathy.
Okay, I just have a couple points. First of all, I just want to go on record stating the CRA is not being investigated by the FBI. I think people are confused about that. Individuals who are associated with the CRA and who have done business with the CRA, perhaps in their dealings with the CRA, are being investigated. The organization itself is not being investigated. And I just wanted to clear that up. I think there's been some misrepresentation, perhaps in the paper about that. And having said that, Gordon, you know what? You sold me. You sold me, not on the parking garage, but you sold me when you started talking about infrastructure. The purpose of the CRA is to cure blight in areas. In order for an area to become a CRA, it has to have several factors well stated in statutes, and the biggest of those is blight. I drive through downtown now and I see no blight. Okay, the blight is gone. How do we, as a community, fix blight? Infrastructure. Infrastructure is 100% correct. You provide good infrastructure so developers like Gordon want to come in and build there. That is the great part of what the CRA does. Perhaps they've gotten a little bit out of that main focus, that main mission. They do things like they give money to festivals, okay? That's great. They've given money to a nonprofit, okay, to help fix the inside of their building. I'm not sure how that's going to clear blight. So Gordon, you know what? I'm supporting you. I like it. I'm with you.
Ken.
I think this is pretty complex. I think I would be, at this moment in time, on 2 rather than 1 or 3 of these motions if I had a choice, which I may not.
And I'll remind you, we do not have a motion in front of us.
Do what?
We do not have a motion in front of us.
Well, I still may not have a choice. You might not get a second. But the
second your motion.
Now, what? Let me see if I understand what we're talking about here. We're talking about only the CRA. For example, when I listen to Kim talk about a lot of the projects in different areas like sidewalks and other things, the county itself could do those things if it wanted to. A lot of those things. So it didn't have to be, we're not saying the county can't spend money on any of these things. We're just saying the CRA, we're just talking about what the CRA can spend, not what the county can spend.
If they want a Leon County dollar in it, it has to go for something that is, at the end of the day, owned by the people of Leon County.
So you're not talking about just the CRA, you're talking about...
I know, I'm talking about the CRA or, if they changed it tomorrow to the CRD. One of these special development things that's outside of the general fund.
Well, that's what I would need some more information about, because when I hear discussions about sidewalks or other facades or beautification programs, widening roads and doing things like that, it seems to me that those are things that the county can do, and we're not talking about restricting what the county itself can do, but we are talking about what the CRA can or can't do. And I don't think I quite understand. For example, some of those projects, if I understand the CRA right now, and that's a big if, when we do some of those projects, there's city money and county money in it. It's not just the county. So the county, some of these projects, the county might want to do but can't afford to fund the whole thing by itself. It needs city participation to have enough money to actually fund the project. So I think that kind of complexity, I think the concept and the idea that you're bringing forth is a good one, and it sounds great, but I don't think I understand CRAs enough, what they do and what they think and how they're structured to have a position on that issue. That's why I would pick 2, not to take it off the table, not to say we're not going to do it, but that maybe we do have a presentation from the CRA or whoever does that process so that we can see. I haven't really focused on who the 9 members are and where they come from and all that sort of stuff.
So would you like to clarify something he said? I can
would.
see you jumping there.
It's not city dollars or county dollars that would exist if the project isn't built. So the money that goes to support ideas that the CRA asks the developer to include beyond their building come from tax increment financing, which is taxes above their assessed level in 2004 in the downtown district. Only those taxes created by that project can be utilized to support the design criteria or the infrastructure that's a part of it. There was, down on Madison Street, there was a bunch of power lines that were buried and stuff. I mean, there's a lot of infrastructure that goes along with it. And as the CRA matures and the 34 it goes away, you narrow the scope of what you would do. And it becomes more and more infrastructure. And there's more and more dollars to do it because taxable projects were created.
Well, you see,
Neil.
my point was well taken. I don't understand it. So that's why I was going for 2.
Vince, can you clarify for me what the county's continuing relationship will be with the CRA outside of the 3 projects that you referenced before? I'm trying to figure out what impact might this have, and that will depend on what the county's relationship is with the CRA moving forward.
Sure, let me do that. Let me first jump in and just try to assist a little bit in this conversation. Herb and I both worked with CRAs for a really long time, and you're right. There's a lot involved for sure. And if you set aside for just a moment all of the good arguments about what CRA funds should be used for, and we may be able to come up with a lot of arguments around this table that you think they should only be used for public infrastructure projects, and Kim may think they should be used for festivals, and Kathy may think that they should be used for after-school programs or facade improvements or painting. The fact of the matter is, from our review of the statutes, of the law, of our agreements, it's pretty clear that if you have a city-only CRA, that the law provides that there are pages, we know, of powers and authorities that are enumerated in the law that you have. And if you're in a city-only CRA, the city commission can restrict any of those things. They can decide this is what we want to do with these dollars. If you're in a county-only CRA, which there are, not here, but similarly, the law says that a county, you have the eligibility, you have the powers granted to you to exercise all of these powers and authorities, what you want to spend projects on, how you want to limit your participation, all of these things. And in a county-only CRA, the county can limit those things, again, to public infrastructure projects. But if you have a city and county CRA, then any limitations that you wish to impose shall be arbitrated in an interlocal agreement and agreed upon by the 2 parties. And there's nothing in the law that says, and Herb can jump in here, that says unless otherwise specified in your county charter. It basically says those shall be agreed to in an interlocal agreement. And again, that sort of gets to the point that you could, and it may not be satisfactory to this committee, but you could say something, going to Gordon's point, if it's something that you decided you wanted to do, say, county commission, to the extent that you agree to a boundary adjustment of a CRA into the future, because you have to agree to that, you should restrict your revenues to XYZ. You could say that. But again, it goes back to the fact that you couldn't effectuate it through a county charter amendment. And so I just wanted to spend a little time on that, just on the technical, forget about the good arguments, but just technically speaking on how that would work. To Neil's question, what the county's participation level will be in the future and that sort of thing. When we bring this back, the county will have an option. Do nothing is always an option. Stay the course, continue to stay in the CRA as reflected in the current interlocal agreement, and the county may do that. Initially, the county and the CRA have directed staff to come up with options on what it would look like if the county exercised an out relative to the downtown CRA with those 3 projects, the 3 projects being, generally speaking, the Cascades project at Cascades Park, the Envision project, and the hotel project, the Lowe's project, right? So with those, and again, the county we've determined, again, that those projects can essentially pay for themselves in the CRA, which means that they would benefit from only the tax increment that their projects generate. So to pay whatever incentives that we've agreed upon for those projects would be generated by those projects themselves over a period of time. So generally, that's how that's what that's going to look like when it comes back.
Thank you, Gordon.
Oh, well, I would like to make a motion, and I certainly would like to have it, Vince's and Herb's help on, to propose the charter amendment language so that it would be prospective and only apply in the future, and it would direct the county in language that's appropriate to have future CRA or similar sorts of economic development dollars, that their consideration of revenue would be restricted to infrastructure and other items that are owned by the public. And that would be my motion.
Just for future.
Is there a second?
Just for future. I'm not trying to, I can't unring a bell, and I'm not trying to go backwards.
Yeah, I'm going to second that.
Okay. Reggie, you had your card up.
Yeah, I just have a question. Is there a board chair or an executive director of the CRA that we can invite and have that individual give us a presentation and be able to answer questions from the committee?
I think if we choose option 2, which is not what's on the table now, that would be an option. So we have a motion and second. Is there anyone else who would like to speak?
We have the first option, number 2, by Ken and Ken.
Did you make that motion, Ken?
Did you make number 2? No. Okay.
Oh, okay.
I second that, council.
But like we did the other day, I don't see why we can't have, if that's what we want to do, we can't have number 1 and more information. This isn't a vote on doing it. It's just a vote on getting some language so we can see exactly what it would say. But we can have all the presentations we want about the issue, can't we?
Well, I would say that if this motion goes forward, we could have more discussion, but that's a different entity than what Gordon is recommending.
And mine is to put the question to the voter. So,
well, yours is to draft an amendment that will go to the commission to then consider, because we don't have the authority to do what you're asking.
The option 1 is not what you're saying.
No, he's made a separate motion. He's made a separate motion.
Oh, okay.
But also, in all of these motions, make sure I understand this process. When we ask them to draft language, like in number 1, they're all going to come back for discussion.
Correct.
And it's not a vote to let them have whatever language they want and it go to the county commission. It's to come back here.
We have to have a simple majority to have them draft, check me if I'm wrong, to have them draft language. We'll then have to, if it comes back and we want to have an item go to the ballot, we have to have 10 votes.
Right, but when it comes back, we can have as much discussion as we want before we have that final vote.
Yes, that's correct.
Yes, and I hear 2 things. I mean, I know some people here have been very involved with the CRA and have good positive feelings about it, and I'm not being critical of that at all. And if you brought in everybody from the top down and they said we've done a great job, it would not change me wanting to put this question to the county commission to want the voters to consider. I'm not here to criticize really what's been done in the past. I just think we can improve and stay away from landmines. And I also think the voters really ought to have a say. It's a radical notion that public money ought to buy something that's owned by the public people, I know.
Well, let me ask you a question. Are you willing, and it doesn't make any difference to me, are you willing to withdraw that motion and second and have us choose option 2, which is to bring more language back to the committee next time, have someone from the CRA come and explain it, and then have your motion at that time?
No, ma'am. I'd like to go on and have a vote on the motion if we could.
Okay.
Today, I think that's, like Ken said, we'll have plenty of time for further discussion.
Okay.
I'd like to call the question, and please read the motion.
Okay. Would you read the motion?
So the motion that I have is for staff to draft charter amendment language applying public standards to any future CRAs.
Let me try to clarify that, Gordon, and you can tell me. What I heard you saying is that prospectively the CRA's dollars would be limited to funding public infrastructure projects. Is that what you want? And my question would be, if it was a charter amendment that legally we could put on the ballot, again, we'll discuss those things. Would it be for county only dollars or county and city?
County only.
Okay.
I mean, I understand we can't. We're just the county.
Okay. But you were talking about doing a charter amendment to have the voters vote.
Well, it's a separate question, but if we do a charter amendment for the county, we can't impose that on the city, can we?
We're not sure if you could even impose it on the county, but that's
yeah.
we'll
So
have to bring that.
my motion was directed only at the county.
Okay, thank you.
We've called the question, so we have to have a vote.
Right.
Reginald Ellis,
No.
Michael Yurick,
No.
Neil Fleckenstein,
No.
Lee Hinkle,
No.
Catherine Jones,
Yes.
Ken Hart,
Yes.
Casey Perkins,
No.
Ennis Prosser,
Yes.
Jay Revel,
Yes.
Gordon Thames,
Yes.
Ted Thomas,
No.
Kim Williams.
No.
Motion fails 5-7.
Now, is there another motion that you'd like to put on the
I'd
table?
like to move option 1. Or is it 2? Which is it?
2.
I'd like to move option 2.
I'll second.
Thanks, Ken.
Okay, we have a motion and second on option 2. Motion a couple seconds. Is there any discussion on item 2?
Is there a second?
All right, so that is to have the staff, let me clarify it, and what you'd like to do is to have the staff bring back more information and to have someone come and explain further what the CRA does. All right, you ready for a vote?
Reginald Ellis,
Yes.
Michael Yurick,
Yes.
Neil Fleckenstein,
Yes.
Lee Hinkle,
Yes.
Catherine Jones,
Yes.
Ken Hart,
Yes.
Casey Perkins,
Yes.
Ennis Prosser,
Yes.
Jay Revel,
Yes.
Gordon Thames,
Yes.
Ted Thomas,
Yes.
Kim Williams.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Could I ask one clarification question so be thinking about this? The county's trying to get out of this entirely, aren't they?
Downtown.
Right.
At least South Side.
So this would actually be, this motion, if it passed, at least for the downtown part, would be an in-between position between getting out entirely and staying in like it is now. You could stay in, but only do for, I mean, it's not an extreme position for the downtown one. It's an in-between position.
Downtown would be, they would remove the tax increment financing dollars that are collected by the CRA, and they would pass through to the county. The city would still participate and take their increment financing dollars to try to continue to improve the district.
Well, all I'm saying is that instead of the county getting out 100% downtown, they could stay in if the dollars were spent on infrastructure that were government owned. So
That's
with
true.
regard to the downtown,
Yeah.
this motion is not extreme, it's a middle ground.
That's good. I like that.
Is that your interpretation, Herb?
Yes.
If the county moves to leave the downtown CRA, then the hypothetical that Gordon proposed would prohibit the county from getting into any other, it wouldn't, any other.
What he's proposed is that if the county gets into any other CRAs, including staying in the downtown,
okay,
that they couldn't spend money on anything but public.
Going forward.
Right. But the alternative is for the county to get out and not spend anything on anything.
Correct. Okay. Okay, well, we'll look forward to that vigorous discussion next time. The last item we have today is...
If I could make one final statement.
You may.
This is a perfect example of not communicating to the public what the CRA is all about is the confusion around this table, and I appreciate the dialogue and debate that we had. Thank you.
All right, the last item we have today has to do with the nonpartisan superintendent of schools and constitutional officers.
Okay, thank you. At this point, I'm going to hand off to the Deputy County Attorney who did all my point work on this particular project. So LaShawn Riggins is going to do the presentation, and hopefully she'll do a better job of not confusing you than I did on the last one.
Let's see what I can do here. Okay, so the question was posed if we could make the Office of Superintendent and constitutional officers nonpartisan. And the answer to one is if the constitutional officers are considered county officers as enumerated in the statute, you can. So in the statute, it lists out certain constitutional officers that are considered also county officers, such as the tax collector, the sheriff's office. Those particular ones, the statute gives the authority for how they are elected, or if you opted to appoint them. In regards to the superintendent of schools, that is not something that is enumerated in the statute being listed as a county officer. So therefore, it is our opinion that we cannot make the superintendent of schools nonpartisan. In my research, I made a couple of phone calls and went through the charters of all of the other charter counties, and also spoke with the general counsel for the Superintendent of Schools Association. And it's likewise her opinion that it is not something that can be done through charter. It is something that would either be under the purview of the school board or the Florida legislature. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Jay, you had your card up.
Thank you, ma'am. I have a number of items I'd like for us to bring back for some more information, particularly when it relates to
relating to this item.
Yes. In this item, this item kind of has two components to it. One component is the superintendent of schools, which it seems like we have an answer there that our charter does not allow us the opportunity to dictate that. Moving on from that, I have a number of items I would like to see us get some further information on. I thought Mr. Barnes brought up some great points from the NAACP's perspective, and just some more information about our electorate and some data on recent elections that I'd like to request. We can have some further dialogue if you'd like before I list out what those are, however you would prefer.
Let's do that. Ted, you were next.
Originally, I proposed this discussion on the changing the constitutional office to nonpartisan, and I'd like to review my basic rationale or thinking on this particular item. 19% of the voters in Leon County are registered as nonpartisan. 20% of the voters in the city are registered as nonpartisan. What that means is that in the primary, whether it's in August or September, those individuals, 20%, 19%, do not have a right to vote in that initial election of those candidates. I know there's been a discussion about African American individuals and their abilities or not abilities to vote in that particular election, and I would offer for Mr. Barnes and other folks is that the City Commission is a nonpartisan election, has been for a number of years. In the city election, we have two African American individuals, a mayor and a city commissioner. The county commission is a nonpartisan race. It was changed, I believe, in the last charter. In that particular instance, we have two African Americans, one who is elected at large and the other one in a district. The Leon County School Board is a nonpartisan election, and it has been that way for a long time. I couldn't really find out when that happened by state statute, but it is by state statute that all 67 counties school district individuals are nonpartisan throughout those 67 counties. In our own county here in Leon County, we have 2 African Americans who sit on the Leon County School Board. So to say that this community hasn't elected individuals because they are in a nonpartisan race, I think is pretty inaccurate in my opinion. And I think that we need to move in our charter committee to change that in our charter so that all individuals, that 19% in the county and 20% in the city, have an opportunity to take a first look at those candidates and not wait until the November election to cast their vote. I think 19 to 20% is a significant number of people. I think it's around 39,000 voters. That's a significant amount of voters that are disenfranchised by us not allowing them to vote in a race for our constitutional officers. Regarding the research that was done by the county attorney, I respect and accept your findings. I guess we don't really have much choice. I think there's been a lot of confusion about that. Certainly, it showed in your research that Columbia County is a nonpartisan school superintendent and is in their charter. I think we found that, ruling through the governor that talked about the authority that they have over school superintendents. Again, another point of confusion. And then your research that talked about the attorney for the school board that identified and said that, yes, in fact, the county does not have jurisdiction over the school superintendent. I accept that. I know there's confusion, but what I'd like to do in addition to addressing the issue of constitutional officers being nonpartisan, I would like this body to send a letter signed by the chair of this committee to the Leon County School Board that basically said we would like you to move ahead to make the superintendent of schools a nonpartisan race and place it on the November 18th ballot.
Before we take the speakers, let me ask a clarifying question. Does this body, first of all, is it the school board, is it only the school board or the legislature that has the legal ability to address this issue? And secondly, do we have the authority to have a letter go to the school board to make a request like that?
To answer your first question, based on my research, and if I can kind of bring in what he was discussing as well, when the Constitution, when the Florida Constitution was last amended, it specifically amended the Constitution to include making the school board members non-partisan. And it did not change and did not speak to the superintendent of schools. It took deliberate action to do one and did nothing with the other. So it was a constitutional amendment, not amendment to the statute. And that may be why you could not locate the information. To the other point, it was the opinion of the general counsel for the Florida Association of Superintendents that the way the school boards are established, that they are the oversight or overseers of the superintendent of schools. And then because it is a constitutional officer and not considered a county officer, then it would be governed by state law and state legislature. So to answer your question, it would be necessary if it were to be changed by the Florida statute, not a charter amendment at a local level.
All right, so are we dealing with apples and oranges here? Do we have two separate issues that we should address, one with the county officers and one with the state officer?
Yes. The county officers are enumerated in statute as provided. It's the sheriff, the tax collector, the property appraiser, and the supervisor of elections.
And so if we address this in either fashion to get more information or to vote one way or the other, we really have to address these as two separate issues.
I think so. I mean, it was done in one agenda item because it was one motion that was made to look at the constitutional officers and the superintendent of school. So that's why it was done. But considering you have jurisdiction over one and out of the other, I think there probably should be a little more clarification as far as direction. If you want to move forward with the constitutional officers, that would need to be a separate motion. And again, it's my opinion that you can't move forward with the superintendent.
Okay,
I don't know if I totally understand what our esteemed attorney just said. Are you saying that the school board does not have authority to affect a referendum to change it to nonpartisan?
No, I'm sorry. If that's not, at least I don't think that's what I said. If I did, no, that was not my intention to say that at all. What I was saying is that we cannot affect that through our charter.
I understand. Yeah, I agree with that. I think that you made that clear in your analysis. I think to clarify even more the authority of the school board, the law states, the statute states, that the school board has the authority to make an appointed superintendent. They don't address in the statute whether it can go to a partisan or nonpartisan race. But I think it's assumed, and I would guess that the attorneys would probably agree, that there's a nexus between the fact that they can appoint a school superintendent and change it, and that it can also have the authority to make it a nonpartisan race.
And if I can jump in, I can't answer that question directly. I mean, they do have the authority to appoint it or non-appoint it, but there's nothing that delineates them to have the authority to make them partisan or non-partisan. They were specifically granted the power to make them appointed or non-appointed. I don't necessarily know that they have the power to make them partisan or non-partisan, and I think that's what I was saying. I think that has to be left up to the Florida legislature.
I would just take issue with that. My research and contacts with election supervisor, in particularly Wakulla County, would disagree with you because they were in the process the last time that they reviewed their charter of doing just what you did not say, and that is they were in a process of changing their school superintendent to a nonpartisan race. So evidently, they must have found some research or some basis on which they could do that. And it turned out that the school superintendent, that particular thing, he did not want to change to a nonpartisan race. So I know there's a lot of confusion in the law, and I think it's not really clear, and I've spent hours, as you have too, trying to figure out where it specifically says they can do that. I think it's implied, but that's, and I think I think the state has delegated that to the school board.
Okay, I think I saw Neil, then Michael, then Reggie, then Kathy. Let's do it that way.
You're very good.
You may answer all of our questions.
One thing that would be helpful, setting aside the school superintendent issue, which obviously has its own complications there, would be a more robust analysis of the pros and cons of making the constitutional officers' races nonpartisan, and that's not something that's in the report here. But I think it would be very helpful to evaluate the 20 other charter counties, and there's however many that do have partisan races, and 5 or 6 that have nonpartisan races. It'd be very interesting to me to know what are the pros and cons of
And you're talking about
this.
the constitutional officers.
The constitutional officers, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yeah, it's really hard for for me to have an informed opinion absent that information. Thank you.
Michael, you're next.
So for clarification, is your focus on partisan or nonpartisan constitutional elections?
Nonpartisan constitutional elections.
So as it currently sits in our charter?
Charter calls for a partisan election except for the supervisor of elections. I'm suggesting that we go a nonpartisan for the other 4 remaining constitutional officers.
Okay, I would also like to set aside the superintendent of schools from the discussion because they have their own body, And I know that in some charter counties, they are hired, they're appointed, and that they're not placed on the ballot for election. So I think that's a separate discussion.
Okay, Reggie?
I think Mr. Thomas brought some great perspective. However, I want to also provide just a, not to get too historical, a bit of a historical perspective. Since about 1867, 1868, the general African American community has always voted in a partisan manner, and then about 1968, 1969, that partisan philosophy shifted. My only fear with going to on a countywide nonpartisan election across the board is that may send a signal to that community that the way they have voted historically has now changed, and that change has come from a commission as opposed to, as Gordon was saying earlier, from the people. The people wouldn't have that voice anymore. It would be from a charter. So at this point, I wouldn't necessarily want to support changing that for that perspective.
Okay, Kathy.
Thank you. I'm on point of the superintendent and writing a letter as a committee. Again, I think we're overstepping our bounds. I think it has absolutely no place for us to interfere in the workings of the school board. Point two, where were all these open minds last week? I was told on two separate issues, the constitutional offices shall remain unto themselves, okay? We have no right to interfere with elected constitutional offices. And here you are talking about making their posts nonpartisan after two of them stood up there and said, do not do this? Come on. You can't have it both ways. Absolutely not. Thank you.
Okay, Jay, you were next.
I have a number of things. To Neil's point, I think we could use some hefty additional analysis, particularly on the part of partisan, nonpartisan constitutional races. And I have a number of points I would like specifically for the staff to bring back to us. Number one, regarding the...
Let me ask you a question. If you're saying that you'd like staff
I would
to bring
make a motion that we come back for more information, and I have some specific points. Does that work?
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate you.
You enumerate those and then
Absolutely.
if you have a second.
First portion of that information regarding the actual electorate, Ted brought up some statistics. I'd like to have that put in some staff analysis so we have the specific numbers. I'd like to know what the total number of voters are in our electorate. I'd like to know a breakdown of the registration of each party and of the NPAs. I'd like to know the growth rates of each of those registration plus or minus over the last decade. Then moving into elections themselves, I'd like to know on your column analysis here showing partisan, nonpartisan, I'd also like to include the actual county commissioner so you can just see which counties also have consistency across. I'm going back to my consistency point. Which counties have partisan county commissioners as well, or nonpartisan county commissioners also. Just include that in the column breakdown so we can know if there's a differentiator like we have. Currently we have a differentiation between how we elect our county commissioners and how we elect our constitutionals. I'd like to see how other counties do that, or if they have a differentiation, if that makes sense. I'd also like to know how often have Leon County's partisan elections for constitutional officers yielded a two-party race in the general election over the last 4 cycles. So the last 4 cycles in which those offices were elected. So I'm curious to know how many of them actually ended up having any opposition in the November election. And then finally, I'd like to know what the voter turnout has been in the primary versus the general election also in those past 4 cycles. I know that was a lot.
Okay. That is the motion. Is there a second?
Second with a friendly addition.
And my motion is not for all. I would like to see that analysis. My motion is for further information and analysis.
So that would be.
I would like to have that in the analysis.
That would be item
Option 2.
Correct.
Yes.
And just also to see how many minority candidates came out of with the
Sure.
the different
Yeah, I'm
parties.
open to any and all additional information anyone might want to request. Those are some specific things I'd like to know.
Okay. Ted.
Catherine, I think the issue that was brought up last week about, I think is different than what this issue is on the table, whether it's partisan or nonpartisan. I think we've disenfranchised 20% of our electorate if we don't allow them the opportunity to vote in a primary in August because they don't belong to a party. My contention is that these are local elections by local individuals. The issues are local. If you talk about state positions, our state representative, our federal representatives, you think you're talking about a base, a foundation, a philosophy at state and national elections that these individuals do follow. But I firmly believe that in our local elections for our constitutional officers, we're talking about local issues that really don't have a nexus to state and national issues. So on that basis, I think they're different issues, Catherine. And I would hope that we can include that 20% of the voters in that first round of elections.
Okay. Kathy?
Just to rebut, Ted, last week, the words out of your mouth when we were discussing including the constitutional officers in the charter having to uphold the code of ethics that the Board of County Commissioners do, you said repeatedly that they are their own separate entities and offices, and you did not agree that we had the right to impose that on them. And I'm going to say that we don't have the right to impose then that they become nonpartisan elections. I am sorry that 20% of our population is disenfranchised. They chose to register as nonpartisan. I wish I could register as nonpartisan, but I don't, so I can vote.
Ted.
Catherine, I know we're in a discussion last week, but the fact of the matter is our charter identifies these constitutional officers as being partisan, and it is the obligation of this committee to review that and make a recommendation whether they're partisan or nonpartisan, and I don't think it has anything to do with the ethics. I think they're independent. My statement last week was those are independent officers, and I don't think it's the jurisdiction of the county administrator and attorney to dictate the performance of these individuals. That's what I stated, and I'll sit on that motion.
You and I are at an impasse, sir.
Okay, so we have a motion and a friendly second with additional request, and I think we're ready for a vote, but without sounding trite, instead of repeating the motion, I'm going to say what he said.
So it's a vote on getting more information?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
that's what.
Call the vote.
Reginald Ellis,
Yes.
Michael Urick,
Yes.
Neil Fleckenstein,
Yes.
Lee Hinkle,
Yes.
Catherine Jones,
No.
Ken Hart,
Yes.
Casey Perkins,
Yes.
Annis Prosser,
Yes.
Jay Revel,
Yes.
Gordon Thames,
More information, yes.
Ted Thomas,
Yes.
Kim Williams.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Yes. Now, let me clarify. We're coming back with more information on two separate. No, we're coming
My
back.
motion was just for
was
more
just for
information on the
constitutional
constitutional
officers.
nonpartisan.
Yes. Now, Ted, would you like to make a motion on your item for nonpartisan school superintendent?
Yes, I'd like to move that this body move that the school board. I have some notes. Let me just take a quick look at it. That the school board move to present a nonpartisan election for school superintendent at the November 18th general election.
I have just one question.
Well, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Yeah. Oh, my question. So it may be a date thing. You were saying move to have an election on November
18
as nonpartisan, but whatever we decide would go to the voter at that time, right?
Yes, that's what I meant.
Or we say through the commission and through the. Okay, that was just confusing.
Well, I'm asking the school board to put this on the November 2018 referendum.
Election sign.
Okay.
And absent the direction from the county attorney that says we don't have the authority to do that, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion?
I'm sorry, I'm not really sure. We're going to ask the school board to put this on the election, on the November 2018 election. That doesn't, I mean, we can make a recommendation, could we not? But how are we going to ask them to do that?
Well, whatever language we can use as a recommendation. The process, as I understand it from my research, is that the school board would take a vote that they would have a nonpartisan election for school superintendent. They would take that motion and give it to the county commission, who would then direct that the supervisor of election would put it on the November 2018 ballot. So that's the process as I understand it.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. We have a vote.
Reginald Ellis?
No.
Michael Urick?
No.
Neil Fleckenstein?
No.
Lee Hinkle?
No.
Catherine Jones?
No.
Ken Hart?
No.
Casey Perkins?
No.
Annis Prosser?
No.
Jay Revel?
No.
Gordon Thames?
I'm going to go with yes.
Ted Thomas?
Yes.
Kim Williams?
Yes.
Motion fails.
And if I may offer a suggestion to you, Mr. Thomas, I think this is an item that would certainly be something that you could take up with the school board separately from this committee.
If he could, he wouldn't be here talking with us.
Well,
I didn't hear you, Kim. What did you say?
I said if he could, he wouldn't be here talking to us.
Well, I appreciate the time and effort and that the attorneys did and everyone else. I think it's a critical issue. However it proceeds, I guess my next step is to go to the school board.
Okay, I think that's the last item we have before us today. I certainly think we've done some good work, and I appreciate all of you offering opinions. We're going to move to see if anybody has anything else, any other ideas that they'd like to bring forward that hasn't been discussed yet that we might like to have the staff get some information on.
We banned noon football games. Is that something within our purview? I think our new coach brings a lot of enthusiasm, and we don't need noon games. Yeah, that's right. Other than that, no.
You'll withdraw that. All right. No other ideas that you'd like to bring?
What's our schedule going forward in December?
Well, that's the next thing that we're going to talk about. I've spoken with staff about the items that we have before us. I think we've done some really, really good work and gotten some good things done. I don't know that there is a need for us to have a meeting next week, which would mean that our next meeting would be January 11th. And unless there are any objections, I would like to suggest that might be what we do. And at that time, we can discuss the items that we had today, plus we also have the option then to vote to direct the staff to bring back charter language to us. So is there anybody who would be opposed to having us have our next meeting on the 11th? Any discussion on that?
Yeah, just one quick question. We can still bring items back?
Absolutely.
January 11th. Okay.
Yes, we can do everything January 11th. All right. Is there any other business to come before the group? Motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second.
Good. Meeting adjourned. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time and effort, and I hope your holidays are very good.
You too.